Hello and greetings to all. Just wanted to hop on and do a quick video. Now, in this video, I do want to lay the groundwork for a lot of the terminology that I will be employing. Now, in every video, I will take a few seconds to explain and elaborate as to why I'm utilizing certain terminology, just in case anybody hasn't seen this particular video. Now, I did want to address, the myriad of ways by which we can identify, particularly as people of Mexican, Hispanic, or Latin American descent. A lot of people that I notice around here, given the demographic, which is North Texas, since primarily most people are of Mexican descent, Mexican American and whatnot, followed by Central Americans and a few sporadic um, populations of Cuban and Puerto Rican descent. A lot of people do prefer Hispanic due to how it's a more politically correct term. And as Mexican Americans, we will normally opt for Mexican American or Chicano. It's kind of like we're given those additional leeways, Mexican American, Chicano, and still, a lot of them will still prefer Hispanic or Latino, even though they probably don't speak Spanish. And even though their ethnicity is more indigenous or African than Latino, Southern European, and so forth. Now, as for me, I do prefer Chicano, um, with an Xicano, or Chicana, for our Chicana sisters. Chicano with the CH to me is pretty much transitory. It's a launch pad from where you can either remain a Chicano, which is perfectly fine, or move on to decolonizing and re-indigenizing. A Chicano, to a certain extent, may still be a subdivision, a byproduct of Latinismo or Hispanidad. So that is why with an X, I'm pretty much reclaiming indigenous phonology, since it is reminiscent of Mexicano. Chicano. So anytime that I do refer to myself, I will use the spelling Xicano, more specifically a re-indigenizing Chicano. Now, a lot of people do have an issue with terms such as indigenous. The reason for this is because once we strip the past few 500 years plus of occupation, before all of that, people were simply the people. There was no such thing as indigenous. It's a post-colonial term. In the words of Trudell, we are older than the concept of Native American. We're older than America itself. We are the people. Um, that is a very valid point. A lot of people are assigning indigenismo to a post-colonial category. However, I do speak about in my book how a lot of people who are taking the New Ager approach and becoming Toltec shamans and uh, masters and sages, a lot of them are not necessarily of Mexican descent or of indigenous descent specifically. So they're kind of jumping in on the bandwagon to say, I don't have to be indigenous, I don't have to be indigenous because that's a post colonial term. Well, you do have to be a descendant of the indigenous people. So I will continue to utilize that term just to clarify. Now, a lot of people might have an issue with myself calling myself an indigenous person, since I do not dress traditionally or live traditionally anymore or have close affiliation with an indigenous territory, um, which is why I kind of stray away. I do consider myself an indigenous person, but more specifically, I'm a re-indigenizing Chicano, and I have the back of my indigenous brothers and sisters who live traditionally, 100%, despite the fact that I am a mixed blood, so to speak. So re-indigenized Chicano is what I prefer to go by. So I will be using indigenous, since I take that a lot of you are new in this movement and this walk of life. So just to separate the ways of old from the ways of modernity, I will use indigenous to kind of stipulate that division. So that is something I will be using. I also favor the term Anahuac, Anahuaca, which is the land between the waters, At Nahuatl. So I will be employing that term as well to refer to indigenous people, particularly from North America to Mesoamerica, since below in South America there might be a different terminology, but inhabitants of the one world, Semanahuac, the world known to the ancients. So it can be a little more all inclusive. There's a certain indigenous liberation group who has coined a term in the Nahuatl language. Um, and it's great because it's pretty much redefining who we are by letting go of misnomers and inappropriate terms, and calling ourselves by a term that is in an indigenous language. However, many have pointed out that it is not grammatically correct and whatnot. Not a lot of people really classify themselves under that in the modern day, in the modern day communities of Nahuatl. And this is not to say that everybody should want to subject to that particular term, since that normally implies that they're a part of that organization, which a lot of people do view as militant and perhaps even radical. I do support a lot of their views, so I have no problem with the term. It's just that I prefer to just leave it up to a person to redefine themselves, because we can't go around, oh, you look brown, you must be indigenous, right? No, if they want to be Hispanic and Latino, we can educate and we can share our knowledge, but we cannot force somebody to go by a particular term, because it may escalate and lead to an altercation and whatnot. So that's pretty much the terms that I will be using. Anytime that I incorporate a Nahuatl word, or in Mayan or in any other indigenous language, I will give a definition, because if anything, I do want to share of what I know regarding these languages. And it's important that we learn a few words that way. The etymology of these words and how they relate to the folklore and mythology of the people. It can give us a more well-rounded and wholesome, learning experience. I do sometimes use the word Aztec, even though it is inappropriate, and historically inaccurate. Um, there are different ways of seeing this. A lot of people state that it was Aztecs whenever they left, whenever they inhabited Aztlan, Aztecas. And then once they migrated southward, they were then Mexicas. A lot of people say they never really were Aztecas. They never really called themselves Aztecas. So I just use it because it does establish rapport with the people who are familiar with the collective term. But whenever I explore a topic that requires us to unlearn what we already know and relearn, I will make it very emphatic. And that is the case with terms such as Azteca. Now, in my book, I do have a chapter that I have devoted to terms that are simply unacceptable. And oftentimes we're not aware of these terms. Of them, it's Indian. And a lot of people use the term Indian. Native Americans among themselves might use Indian, but that's really something that is between the speakers, kind of like the N word. But it's something that we do need to use with much caution, or not use at all. And the reason why it's instilled so strongly in us is because it even has it's reached official level. There's a Bureau of Indian Affairs. About 2 streets going north from where I'm currently residing, it's Indian, street, and then we go on to Spanish, and the term Indio is also something used very, very casually sometimes, to denote somebody who's backwards, somebody who's more, less, I don't know, cultured, whatnot. So that I will also go into detail. That's a conversation in its own. There are different interpretations as to why that term is used. Pretty much, it shouldn't be used unless we're referring to the people from India, and even they might have a different way they would prefer to be classified. So I think that we really need to rehumanize at the same time to re-indigenize, and know that everybody is an individual, a human being, and they deserve the respect, and we ought to pay mind to how it is that they want to be known or be called. Here in these areas, they tend to have a lot of different ways to call people. A lot of them are really offensive, and a lot of them, they're offensive to outsiders and to the people who are being called this, but to them it's a little casual, such as the N-word. So I think we do need to be very cautious about that. But as far as the words that I will be employing, that's the more renowned indigenous. Yes, I am aware of the fact that it once again dehumanizes us by classifying us like animals. Oh, you're indigenous. Okay, you're this and that. But I will use it to kind of establish rapport to separate from the non-indigenous population and non-indigenous topics and whatnot. And but I will address you know anything that I want to clarify right then and there. I will also be using Chicano to refer to myself, a re-indigenized Chicano. Um, and I will be very clear as far as how I refer to certain people. That way I can be politically correct, but also educational. So like I said, I just wanted to. I may in different times add on to this particular subject, but for now, it's pretty much all I want to leave you all with. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, whatever time is left in your time zone, and please feel free to comment and share. Y'all have a good night.